a poll came out about Britain's response to the Black Lives Matter movement in the UK, and it's not looking good for Black Lives Matter, or at least the people who run the organisation. So The Guardian reports Black Lives Matter has increased racial tensions 55%, says UK poll. So that's more than half of the British public think Black Lives Matter, or at least the Black Lives Matter movement, has been bad for racial tensions in the UK. Now, when you break down into this, it gets even more damning for the movement, in which that 44% of ethnic minorities also felt that Black Lives Matter had increased racial tensions. And this was only with 17 people disagreeing with the statement, so the rest of that percent, I assume, is either don't know or preferred not to answer, something like that. So, quite damning for the Black Lives Matter movement that a sizable minority of the BAME community, I guess we'll call it, disagree with them and think they're doing a bad job. And the majority of the British people think they're doing a bad job, or at least increasing racial tensions in a way that is bad. But when you break this down into voting, it gets even more interesting. So when you look at conservative voters, it's about 75% of conservatives think that Black Lives Matter has increased racial tensions, and with Labour voters, 40%. So even in Labour, you've got 40% of people saying this has increased racial tensions. Now, you could interpret this favourably in a way that, while they may have increased racial tensions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that their cause is wrong. So you could say the civil rights movement increased racial tensions, for example, but that doesn't mean their cause was wrong because they were arguing for the right to vote, the right to sit wherever they want on the bus, all the rest of it. But the thing with Black Lives Matter in the UK is they definitely don't have a case, because you can argue with the US with the history. I don't buy it, but I know there's a lot more things to debate there. But with the UK, I mean, Carl went through the data in one of his CAD Daily videos. And what was it? One black person every 10 years or something like that was killed in police custody. And when you run the numbers, that actually means they're underrepresented. Like the white population was overrepresented in the deaths in custody statistics.
So the rainbows are paying off.
The rainbows?
Yeah, the like Metropolitan Police and all the UK police have been like they've been really like rainbowy in their branding and in their presentation.
Yeah, the woke police that are the Met and Manchester police. But
it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just it's a weird signalling.
Yeah, but it means that the Black Lives Matter movement in the UK literally had nothing to stand on, or at least the data says that they have nothing to stand on. Because the argument about Black Lives Matter at the moment is about police brutality.
Yes.
And I've seen their organisation trying to make, but what about COVID and all the rest of it, and a million different things. Well, campaign on that, but you weren't campaigning on that. You were campaigning on police brutality. So the net effect of Black Lives Matter in the UK has been to campaign on something that was a nothing burger, or at least the data says is a nothing burger. And the net result is just increased racial tensions for positive.
So do you know what they have actually been saying? Have they been saying that the issue is as prescient in the UK as in the US? Or are they saying that what's happening in the US affects the whole world or something like that?
So they're from what I've seen from their videos and them on the streets, is they're arguing that, okay, the UK isn't as bad as the US, and they'll cite things like, we don't have firearms or things like this, but we still have the same problems. And okay, you can make that claim, but the data does not suggest that that's true, because when you get into it, like Carl's research showed, not the case, just absolute false lies. And this is why they've had to go into things like the statue of Edward Colston and trying to make arguments that the real issue is culturally we're racist because of so on and so forth. But this is the argument we get every single year to no avail, so not buying that either. But what I found interesting is you could argue, okay, increased racial tensions might be positive if you wanted to spin this, because you could argue that therefore we have more dialogue about race and racism in the UK, and therefore we're
I guess that's what the supporters would be saying.
I don't know how else they're going to spin this, so I'm guessing that's what their response is.
I mean, racial tensions, if you're just answering whether there are racial tensions or not, you could mean that as in like heightened conversation on race or something like that. Right? So
this was we'll get into that in a minute. But I found a Guardian article because I just looked up Guardian racial tensions just to see what came up. And the only other time they talked about it in this way was when the EDL was marching back in 2012, saying that the marches of the EDL were increasing racial tensions within towns in the north, and painting it as a unholy bad thing. And I agree, right? Increased racial tensions is not good. But what were they marching against? They were marching against grooming gangs. Well, in which case they actually had more of a base to stand on than the Black Lives Matter movement in the UK, and they've had the same result. So if you're going to argue the EDL was wrong to do what they did because they increased a lot of racial tensions needlessly or something like this, which I hear a lot of leftists do. I remember at the time people making that argument about them and these marches. You then have to denounce Black Lives Matter UK, because what have they done? They've done exactly the same thing.
And they're even framing it in the same way, right? Or like using the same language, so you can't say that this racial tension is different from that racial tension, or can you? It's a bit of a stretch.
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to get into the head of a leftist to figure out what they think about it. But there was some good response. All the verified checkmarks were very upset about this, so there's an endless list. We won't go through them all, I don't think. But just if you want to just flick through a bunch, I'm not going to read all of them. But the response was essentially that The Guardian, by publishing this, was helping promote racism, or that racism was promoting racial tensions.
Oof.
Which, I mean, if you want to claim Black Lives Matter are racist, I'd agree. My interactions with them, they seem incredibly racist. If you can get the first image up, John. This is just a meme John made that I thought was particularly good. Technical problems. But yeah, no racism. So, Black Lives Matter has increased racial tensions, 55% in the UK poll. No, racism has increased racial tensions. They're the same picture. Yep. No lies detected.
And so that is that more racial tensions or more racism, or that means the same thing, right? And so
I think race warriors always try to increase racial tensions.
Yeah.
Because they want a race war. And you can get this from the far right, or you can get it from, well, I guess we'll call the far left, because the like black nationalists and whatnot tend to be socialists.
And you don't even have to go there. Like, the leaders of BLM are
trained Marxists,
yeah.
is what they called themselves.
Quote. Yeah.
So it's like, well, okay, if you want to say you're far left, you're far left.
Yeah. So it's fair to call them that. We're not smearing them or anything.
No. I mean, that's what they describe themselves as.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd just bring this up because it's just hilarious that the British public at large has massively rejected Black Lives Matter, and I think rightfully. And you can see the government starting to make moves on this, because we spoke about Kemi Badenoch. I will get her name right one day. The fact that she said that this was an organisation that was divisive and not useful for the UK. And I'm glad they're dying out. But yeah, just some good news that yes, we're not alone. It's not just the dissidents that agree with this. The general British public also agree that these guys are not useful for society.